Chosen ones, with all due respect, this path is not for everyone. When the wheels of your mind are turning at an unusual speed, the world you are in starts to feel foreign and suffocating. The chosen ones know this. And if these words resonate with you, you are part of a lonely but powerful minority. Create enemies? It is very simple. Speak the truth. Instead of shaping your thoughts, speak them directly. Deviate from the average. Shatter the framework of superficial dialogues. You will see how much people hate being forced to think. Intelligence is applauded as an ornament on the surface of society, but seen as a threat when actually used. Because stupidity is not only tolerated, it is embraced as a virtue. The reverse Flynn effect. People are not just becoming less intelligent, they are adopting it as a way of life. And you? You are one of those who are standing against this decline. So when you feel you are not understood, remember, it's not you. Before we continue with this divine revelation, take a moment to do 3 things. Press the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment saying, "Thank you, Jesus." This will send a powerful signal to the universe and increase the impact of the message. If you are truly chosen, remember that your soul already knows that this message is for you. Your life will change, so if you are ready, stay with me until the end. When you avoid small talk, when you deny yourself cheap endorsements, when you don't kneel to idols in the temple of mediocrity, it is inevitable that you will be seen as a natural threat. But this is not a curse. Welcome to the lonely but exciting realm of being chosen. For true light illuminates the path of those who walk alone. First, the general public wants comfort, not wisdom. In reality, people desire convenience more than intelligence. They want individuals who don't make them think too much, perspectives that don't make them think, and debates that don't make them rethink who they are. Real, sharp, unabashed intelligence disturbs the idea that one already knows enough, so it causes discomfort. When you don't make a fool of yourself, you violate the unwritten rule, "Don't make a fool of me." Most people don't hate your intelligence. On the contrary, they like the way it confronts them with their own shortcomings. They worry that in a conversation you might expose the mental shortcuts they take, the outdated ideas they perpetuate, or the intellectual laziness they have been able to escape for years. That's why they call you tough or arrogant. This is because their brains are not used to doing hard work, not because you are. They are conditioned to value the simplicity of social scenarios, the comfort of groupthink, and the ease of half-truths. You, on the other hand, are unyielding. Whether you donate $50, $100, or more, your support will enable us to share these words of love, hope, and faith with the world. You don't pretend to be impressed by superficial insights. You don't laugh at unfunny jokes, and, worst of all, you ask questions they can't answer. They are offended by this, not because you are rude, but because you remind them of something they would like to forget. They can become more aware, more intelligent, and sharper. But this requires work, and work is unpleasant. Therefore, instead of taking on the task, they take the easy way out. They call you too often, they distance themselves from you and get angry with you. But in fact, they just want you to slow down. They don't want to keep up with you. Write 77 to take your advantages and see God's plan unfold before you. The second is your refusal to engage in small talk, which is more of a ritual than a dialogue. Most individuals talk to fit in rather than to connect. Especially in social contexts, conversations are more about following a routine than sharing ideas. Often the words themselves carry little meaning. Everyone has a role to fulfill, whether it's through polite nods, stereotypical jokes, or meaningless phrases like, "How are you?" where no one is really interested in a response. This is all scripted to maintain easy, smooth, and most importantly, pleasant encounters. People see your refusal to participate in this ritual as rebellion rather than intelligence. They are uncomfortable with your silence. Experience what it is really like to be chosen. You are not traveling alone on this journey. If you secretly believe that you are chosen, you are in the right place. By choosing to join, you can further your relationship with us, access exclusive information, and get the help you need on your spiritual journey. It's not just about joining a group. It's about gaining access to special insights that can change your life and help you get closer to your divine purpose. Make your decision now and join us on this journey. Claim your right to be one of the chosen ones. Sign up today. They resent you for refusing to engage in meaningless small talk. Your passion for deep conversations is seen as social ineptitude, your depth as arrogance, and your lack of enthusiasm as judgment. The real problem is not your lack of social skills, but your unwillingness to spend your energy on fake socializing. Most conversations are just linguistic filler, a way of avoiding silence rather than an opportunity for real communication. People expect you to laugh at the same old jokes, do the same old things, and pretend to be insightful with your superficial views. But when you don't, you cause friction. They feel vulnerable. Suddenly they realize that their words are meaningless and that they are just talking. And instead of asking why they rely on such meaningless encounters, they put the blame on you. You are not boring. You are not an outcast. You just don't understand why you fill the air with meaningless words. People are more agitated about this than anything else because they know in their hearts that you are right. Third, their mental laziness is exposed by your presence. People get angry with you because you make them realize their mental laziness, not because you are clever. They have lived for years, even their whole life, thinking barely enough to get by. They take superficial information and claim it to be knowledge, but they don't evaluate their own views or engage in meaningful questioning. When you come in and don't follow the same rules, they suddenly feel vulnerable. Not that you are always patronizing. On the contrary, your presence reminds them that they could be more insightful, intelligent, and sharp. But they are not. And instead of addressing it, they would rather harbor resentment towards the person who made them feel this way. It is harder for them to admit that they are settling for too little than it is for you to say it is too much. They react as if your depth is an attack on their way of life, so they find your questioning annoying and your critical thinking skills offensive, because in a sense it is. When you question conventional perspectives, when you ask why instead of just nodding, when you refuse to accept things as they are, you disrupt their comfortable thinking patterns. And often people cling to comfort instead of truth. To connect yourself to divine intervention and receive the gifts of clarity, courage, and unconditional love, write 88 in the comments section if you feel the weight of this message in your soul. They get angry because they know deep down inside that you are right, not because you are wrong. But it takes work to accept that, and work is labor. Because it is easier to blame you than to face the fact that they have slipped, they try to bring you down to their level instead of rising to yours. Number 4, they hate feeling inadequate, not you. Most of the time, people hate how some people make them feel rather than the real person. And you unwittingly become a mirror when someone like you walks into the room, intelligent, insightful, and unwilling to accept superficial thinking. A mirror that reflects not only their current self, but also their potential self if they had made other decisions. They do not deliberately choose to be angry with you. Rather, it is because they feel uneasy with you. You expose them to the fact that they are working far below their full capacity, to the intellectual shortcuts they take, and to their repressed curiosity. Instead of using this as inspiration to do better, they reject you as the cause of their suffering. It is easier for them to call you arrogant, out of touch, or overly dramatic than to accept that they may need to reconsider their own way of life. This is how your brilliance comes out, even when you are not trying to be threatening. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to brag, and you don't need to offend anyone. Being who you are is enough to make people uncomfortable. In addition, individuals push you away because they are built to protect themselves. They talk, mock, and belittle your intelligence, labeling it as weird, scary, or nerdy. This is not an accurate representation of your true self, but rather a psychological defense mechanism. The truth is that if these same people thought they were really smart, they would not be bothered by your presence at all. However, they don't think so. As a real breathing counterexample, you make it difficult for them to ignore their deep-seated concern that they are substandard. So instead of facing this reality, they decide to reject the mirror, shatter the image, and convince themselves that the problem was never about them. Fifth, They see your truthfulness as arrogance. It shouldn't be illegal to be blunt, reasonable, and accurate, but for some reason it is. When you communicate in a very factual, organized, or well-reasoned way, people hear an insult rather than your words. "I am smarter than you," they hear. It doesn't matter if you are just relaying facts or making a neutral statement. If your comments are too subtle, too sophisticated, or too free of unnecessary phrases, people will believe that you are demeaning them. They confuse condescension with clarity. Moreover, in a society where people are used to ambiguity, where opinions are often based on feelings rather than facts, and where small talk is the norm, accuracy looks like a personal attack. People who enjoy meaningless conversations are therefore uncomfortable around you. You don't use words like "I think" or "maybe," or rely on filler words to make people feel more comfortable. You are serious and meaningful in what you say. They don't appreciate this. On the contrary, they don't like it because to them, it means that you believe you are superior to them. Ironically, true arrogance comes from refusing to learn rather than being precise. However, those who accuse you of being arrogant are usually those who are unwilling to think deeper. Instead of recognizing that they may need to develop their own ideas, they prefer to ignore you. They need a reason to reject what you say without bothering to question it, not because they really believe you are arrogant. This explains why discussions with some people are fruitless. I ask my chosen friends, would you please click on the super thank button and donate at least $100 to preserve the light God has given you? Even if you are speaking rationally, they react emotionally. They are struggling with their own anxieties while you are trying to have a conversation with them. And they prefer to see your truthfulness as a weapon rather than an attack, failing to realize that it is a tool. Sixth, you don't offer them your strengths. People connect with your shortcomings. Credibility, not intelligence, is the basis of social relationships. And unfortunately, most individuals find it easier to connect over their flaws. They bond through shared difficulties, grievances, and vulnerable times. They don't want to be unhappy, but it makes a good discussion starter. An example of a bonding technique is gossip. People bond immediately when they put someone down together. Another is complaining. Friendship-promoting phrases include, "I hate my job and life is so unfair." Funny self-deprecation? Even better. People like to listen to others criticize them because it gives them hope that they are not the only ones having a hard time. The problem is that you are not cooperating. You don't connect through negativity. You don't engage in gossip, and you don't put yourself down to appease others. As a result, you are ostracized, not because others don't like you, but rather because you don't conform to unwritten standards of social bonding. This does not mean that you believe you are perfect. You struggle, just like everyone else. The difference is that you do not exchange them for money. Being mediocre is not who you are. You don't pretend to be insecure to win favors. If you don't, you become unlikable in a society where people converge on common flaws. People resent your strength not because you are strong, but because it makes them think of their own shortcomings. Seventh, you pose a danger because of your capacity to recognize deception. Subtle manipulation is the basis of most social interactions, not in a malicious, evil sense, but in a way that maintains harmonious relationships. People expect certain unwritten norms to be followed, rules that ensure that everything is based on predictability rather than truth, and they resort to flattery to gain acceptance and guilt to gain favors. Only when you see through these strategies, when you point out inconsistencies rather than accept them, and when you refuse to be guilt-ridden, can you turn the system upside down. You become an unpredictable variable, and variables are hated by individuals. This is why manipulators stay away from you. That is why you challenge those in positions of authority. They cannot control you the way they can control everybody else, not because you are doing something wrong. Most people are trained to conform, to keep quiet, to follow social norms, even when they don't make sense. But what about you? You ask questions. The strings of performance are visible. That's what makes you dangerous. Not because you jeopardize people's health, but because you jeopardize their capacity to influence others in an unquestionable way. People don't like to be exposed. They don't like it when their emotional negotiations fail. And instead of changing their strategy, they conclude that you are the problem. Eighth is relatability, a secret name for self-deprecation. Praise for relatable people is common, but people often want to say, "Don't make me feel inadequate." Although society says that keeping your feet on the ground is a virtue, in practice this often means that you have to make yourself smaller to make others feel more comfortable. Whether it's your intelligence, your self-awareness, or your refusal to accept mediocrity, the moment you perform at a level that intimidates others, you become a problem. The illusion of equality is broken by your mere presence, not because you are doing something wrong. People like to think that they are as smart, insightful, and capable as everyone else, without making an effort. When someone like you shows up, an internal struggle arises that easily points out flaws in their reasoning or limitations they have overlooked. They convince themselves that you need to bring them down to their level because they don't want to feel inferior. However, what they call relatable is just a demand for an intellectual disguise. They want you to talk in parts instead of whole ideas. Even if you know something, they want you to pretend you don't. To keep the peace, they want you to accept what you don't believe. Refusing to do so makes you arrogant, defiant, and a bully. Being smaller to make others feel bigger is not true sincerity. It is about being true to yourself regardless of whether others can identify with you. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, that is their insecurity, not your business. Number 9. You are not giving them the validation they need, and they need it more than the truth. Most people want to be agreed with rather than informed. They seek approval more than they seek the truth. As a result of refusing to play this game, you become socially undesirable. Consider the nature of most conversations. When someone makes a sloppy claim that is oversimplified, exaggerated, or just plain wrong, everyone nods in agreement. They agree, not because they think it is true, but to keep things on track. No one wants to be the one to say, "Actually, that's not quite right," because it creates conflict. It will require individuals to think instead of just connecting with each other. And for the same reason, your presence causes disruptions. You question assumptions. You resist complacent thinking. You force people to think critically about their beliefs instead of just relying on well-known stories. And because thinking is labor, it wears people down. It forces individuals to leave the comfort of their mental autopilot and confront the idea that they might be wrong, or worse, that they have held a false belief for years. The majority of individuals would rather be satisfied with their current situation than move forward. They don't like you because you make them uncomfortable, not because you are wrong, but because you don't give them easy approval. They don't want to be reminded that intellectual laziness is a decision, and your presence reminds them of that fact. Then they turn you away. They reject you because you are too strong-willed, too critical, or too passionate. But in reality, they hate not what you say, but the fact that they cannot ignore what you say. 10th, you constantly remind them that they are wasting their time. The majority of individuals are just getting older. They are not growing. And this is a terrifying insight. They have been intellectually and emotionally stagnant for years, if not decades, assuming that enlightenment will only come from time. Then you show up, living proof that development is a decision rather than a given. Have you read the books? You have had in-depth discussions. Instead of accepting things as they are, you have asked questions about them. Even if you say nothing about it, people can sense it. They pay attention to your speech, analysis, and attitude. It is also a reminder that if they had worked hard enough, they too could have reached this point. But they didn't. Instead of using this insight as inspiration to do better, they hate you for making them realize it. Because it absolves them of responsibility, it is easier for them to think that you were just born different, or that you have a natural intelligence. If your brilliance is just the result of luck, their stagnation is not their fault. But they know the truth in their hearts. They realize that for every hour they spend on meaningless entertainment, they could have learned something new. Every time they run away from a challenging discussion, they lose the chance to broaden their horizons. They have wasted every hour spent protecting their egos instead of challenging their views. And now this situation is too painful to deal with. So instead of admitting that they could have done better, they target the person who did it. You. 11th. They prefer echo chambers rather than expansive brains. The majority of individuals seek validation rather than information. They want to be reassured that their prejudices are correct rather than have their beliefs questioned. This is why you are dangerous, because of your intelligence, your capacity for critical thinking, and your unwillingness to accept things as they are. Consensus, not truth, is what sustains social groupings. The unwritten rule is clear. We are a group because we share the same beliefs. The moment you put forward an idea that upsets this balance, you become an outsider. You are questioning the identity of the group. You are not just putting forward a concept. This is why individuals prefer echo chambers, places where their ideas are repeated without being challenged, to debates. And when you go in there and offer depth, nuance, or uncomfortable truths, you break the spell. You remind them that things are more complicated than they would like, and instead of valuing that, they reject it. People's reactions to well-reasoned arguments will show you this. Instead of confronting your logic, they will accuse you of being defiant or belligerent. Instead of considering your point of view, they will reply, "You always have to be right." The pain caused by your ideas is more important than the quality of your thinking. Rather than grapple with complexity, they choose the security of certainty, even if it is based on illusion. Intelligence is therefore very isolating. The majority of individuals refuse to think deeply, not because they are incapable of doing so. Rather than risk separation through intellectual honesty, they prefer to maintain harmony through shared ignorance. And it's okay if maintaining that harmony means throwing you out. The 12th point is that their social skills are designed for average encounters. The majority of individuals are only adept at relaxed, low-effort social interactions. They are not very good at discussion. They have no problem repeating the same cliches, laughing when appropriate, and making small talk. However, when the discussion requires nuance, critical analysis, or genuine interest, they falter. This is not because they lack intelligence, but because they have never had to learn such skills. The focus of the vast majority of social encounters is comfort, not content. People converse to connect, not to learn. Moreover, for the average individual, making connections is more about reaffirming familiarity than sharing important thoughts. However, the moment you start talking, the typical script stops working. Clichés are not countered with more clichés. You do not accept evasive responses. You strive for clarity, depth, and meaningful discourse. This completely throws them off balance. They feel vulnerable because they never realized how superficial their communication style was, not because you offended them. The first person who really wants to talk looks like an aggressor to someone who has avoided talking all their life. Your depth is perceived by them as hostility. They think you are being questioned because you are curious, and if they can't keep up, they believe that the problem is with you, not with them. This is why you are labeled socially uncomfortable when in fact you are just behaving differently. They are used to pleasant, predictable, and easily ignored conversations that serve as elevator music. But you offer them meaning, complexity, and composition. They also hate you for showing them their limits because they don't have the resources to participate in it. Your social skills are suited for something deeper than what the world is used to, not because you lack them. And that is what makes you different from others. 13th, the greatest sin is to be unashamedly yourself. People who have adapted to fit in hate to see someone not doing the same thing. This is the fundamental truth that underlies all of this, including resentment, alienation, and subtle hostility. They have been practicing self-deprecation for years. To fit in, they have learned to minimize their knowledge, soften their views, and appear to be interested in things they are not. They have internalized the idea that fitting in is more important than standing out. Then you show up completely disregarding these rules. You are who you are, completely, unconditionally, and without apology. And that makes them angry, not because they have been harmed by you, not because you are wrong, but you are revealing a terrible truth. They didn't have to conform. They didn't have to be dull to be loved. They just believed they were. If that is the case, if all their compromises were unnecessary, what does that say about the life they created? That's why they try to make you feel like the problem. They can't deal with the fact that they are betraying themselves when they don't have to, not because you are. Your sincerity reminds them of their decision to downsize. Instead of facing it, they try to bring you down to their level. Because if they can make you question yourself, if they can make you think whether you should be as brave or as smart or as courageous as they are, they may feel that they are right in their decision. They can convince themselves that the only option is to betray themselves, but you are contradicting them just by being here. Therefore, they cannot tolerate you. Conclusion. The price of having unconditional intelligence. The world despises what intelligence reveals, not intelligence itself. It despises the uneasiness of facing its own inactivity, the uneasiness of having to confront deeply held ideas, and the silent shame of discovering that ignorance is always a decision. When you do not compromise yourself for the comfort of others, you become a mirror they would rather break than look into. This is why people are uneasy around you. It is not because you are arrogant, defiant, or unlovable. You are a subversive, and that is why. You subvert the social conventions that benefit from mediocrity. You destroy the myth that everyone has the same level of understanding. You shatter the illusion that one flourishes only because one belongs to a group. But the truth is that you were never meant to fit in. You are conspicuous because of the same things that make you feel alone. The world will pressure you to be smaller, softer, and more acceptable. Do not give in to this pressure. Do not sacrifice acceptability for depth. Never trade truth for acceptance. Don't feel the need to apologize for being who you are. Yes, there will be moments when you will appear alone. Yes, you will be misinterpreted. But remember that they are not rejecting you. They are rejecting the mirror of themselves that you make them perceive. And this is their battle, not yours. Being relatable is not mandatory for you. You don't have to win everyone. You have to be yourself, tirelessly, unabashedly, and unashamedly. And if that makes them uncomfortable, leave them alone. If this message resonated with you, if you have experienced the weight of being misinterpreted, of being different, of refusing to compromise to fit in, you belong here. Thinkers, inquirers, and those who do not accept mediocrity as the standard are the target audience of this channel. To make sure you never miss a video that speaks to you in a way the rest of the world doesn't know about, click the subscribe button and enable alerts if you haven't already. If this video speaks to you, please like it. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. I read them all. Most of all, be sure to forward this video to someone who needs to hear it. The world needs more brains that won't atrophy, let's face it. Until next time, stay focused and unapologetic.